Hi, I'm Don Portala, and you're listening to Maintaining Sweat Equity, the plight of small business in the wake of COVID. On this week's episode, I speak with Chanelle Camire, the founder of Sweet Balance. Sweet Balance is a yoga studio that, in addition to specializing in the Yin Yoga style, also offered spa and bodywork services. Chanelle and I have known each other since 2006, when we met while I was casting for my first feature, and have collaborated on several film projects over the years. We sat down just before the holidays last year to discuss the transition that her business was currently going through. I should take a moment to give credit where credit is due. It was actually Chanelle that gave me the idea for the title of this podcast. Until this interview, I'd never heard the term sweat equity before, which describes the investment made into a business that can't be measured in dollars and cents, but rather by the blood and sweat that went into building it. And I guess the question that I'm hoping to ask with this podcast is, how do we, collectively as a society, hold on to that investment, especially when it comes to small business? There were two major takeaways that I found to be intriguing about Chanelle's story. First, the challenge of being a brick and mortar business that essentially needed to go 100% virtual almost overnight. And second, her incredibly positive outlook on the future. For Chanelle, COVID-19 was a hard reset on her entire business model, but a welcomed one. And even though it resulted in an initial 60% loss of clientele, the transition over to a digital platform will actually be better suited to herself and her staff in the long term. With that said, let's hear from Chanelle.
So I'm Chanelle Camire. I'm the founder of Sweet Balance Yoga Studio and Spa.
Can you tell me a little bit about what made you want to start this yoga studio?
Well, first off, Sweet Balance is deeply rooted into this color that I'm wearing right now. When I had first moved to the United States, I can remember being about 4 or 5 years old, and all I wanted to do was take dance lessons. Our neighbors, the Myrie girls, they went to dance every day. And so I would sit on my front steps and I would wait for them to come home and to teach me what they learned that day. And my parents didn't have the heart to tell me that they couldn't afford to bring me to dance. And so one day my mom surprised me with a shopping date, and we went to Dancer's Partner, and I picked out a leotard, a turquoise leotard. And I wore that leotard every day, and I would sit on the front steps and I would wait for the Myrie girls to come and teach me what they learned that day. I never got to go to dance. And so when I created Sweet Balance, it was in honor and memory and celebration of my little girl. And I wanted to have this be the foundation for everyone that I would come in contact with, that no matter what your dreams are, no matter what drives you, that we can still have this opportunity to make them come to life. And so that's really where Sweet Balance comes from.
Can you talk more specifically about Yin Yoga and why that specific style is important to you?
So Yin Yoga is a practice of receiving and allowing. We come into shapes or poses for an extended amount of time where we surrender into a shape. And while we're surrendering into these shapes for a minimum of 2 minutes, the transformation of our connective tissues, even on a cellular level, our body begins to change. And this practice is stillness. It is allowing ourselves to connect with who we really are. It's to get beneath all the chatter and the distractions. It helps us to get quiet. It's this feeling of coming home. And so Yin Yoga is truly a meditative style of yoga, and where other styles, Yang, are more active. And so active meaning like the doers, the go-getters. It's a lot of us type A, need to get it done. And so what we all need in these type A personalities, or us go-getters, is this yin, where we slow down, we pause, and we just practice being.
If you were to describe Sweet Balance in the form that it existed, let's say a year ago or 2 years ago, in the before time of COVID, for anyone who's not familiar with it, how would you have described it?
Sweet Balance is like the Cheers of yoga studios. It was the place where people would come together, and truly everybody knew your name. So Sweet Balance was located in the heart of downtown Wakefield, Massachusetts. We offered yoga classes, fitness classes, meditation, and then we would also offer specialty workshops. In addition to our yoga studio, we had our spa that was right next to it. And that's where we offered bodywork services, facials, and then also integrated nutrition health coaching services as well.
So I know you kind of already touched on this a little bit, but why this business? Why specifically these services and this business?
So Sweet Balance really was my healing. The name itself, Sweet Balance, was created in my yoga teacher training in 2013. And I created Sweet Balance because, well, one, I was so fortunate to have had all the incredible teachers and leaders that I've studied with. But what I felt was a lot of anxiety and pressure to be perfect. And I know that the healing process is far from perfect. It's far from pretty. It is uncomfortable and it's not pretty and it can be painful. And I wanted to create a space where people felt safe just to be who they were. And that's being imperfect. And that is really honoring how unique we all are, that we're all bio-individual and that what is good for me may not be good for someone else. But with knowing that, I could hold the space that everyone felt free to heal or to grow or to express who they were without the impressions of others.
What are some of just the normal day-to-day challenges that your business faced before the pandemic hit?
Gosh, so being a small business owner, I would say the biggest challenge is the fact that you don't ever clock out. Your business is your baby, and the emotional toll that it can take can be quite exhausting. And then you add on the day-to-day tasks of your business, right? Like I employ primarily women, and a lot of my teachers had children. And, kids get sick and sometimes they get sick often. So it was a lot of calling out of work and needing to cover shifts last minute. Just a lot of communication where things would change often. And then, meeting the needs of our community, right? Like everyone needed something different. I often felt the pressure of like I wasn't doing enough or I couldn't get it all done. And, thankfully our community was very supportive for the most part and how much they loved the community. But I always felt that pressure that I was always just a few steps behind and the to-do list never ended. I was single for the first 4 years of being a brick and mortar owner. And it's easier to run a business when you're not in love. And when I fell in love in our 5th year, I really started to look at my life and that I couldn't work 15-hour days anymore and be there 6 days a week or sometimes 7 days a week. So I would say the challenges of being a brick and mortar owner is the strain that it takes on everyday living, missing out on birthday parties and lunch dates. And I remember our first year in business, and it was Christmas Eve, and my family were getting together, and I lied to them and said that I was late because I had something to take care of. But the reality is that I stayed late on Christmas Eve so I could finish off the gift card purchases so I could go shopping that night. And I didn't have the money to go shopping until I sold those gift cards that day. And that's the challenges around brick and mortar, or small business rather, is that being in business the first couple of years, like you're not taking a paycheck. And so in addition to that, I was working 2 other jobs to financially provide for myself. I drove the same car for 15 years, so I didn't have a car payment. So I didn't have to be worried about the income coming in. I also lived in a 400 square foot studio apartment, so that way I could afford my rent for my studio and have less overhead costs for my personal life. You make the sacrifices, and there's times when you're like, all right, I'm doing this from my heart. And there's other times you're like, I'm in the deepest sense of resentment right now and I'm angry. So it's a lot.
So let's rewind back to March 15th, 2020. What was your initial response or reaction to the pandemic?
Yeah. Well, to start, I had a minor surgery on March 12th. And so I was deeply impacted by, I was put under, right? And I was in the emergency room and I remember, or the operating room, and I'm like, why is it so weird in here right now? And had my surgery, came home, woke up to the news saying that people were getting sick and that we were in a pandemic. And then the next day I was a little bit more sober from the medicine and realized, oh my goodness, like this is serious. So I decided that Friday that we were shutting our doors. And I'm so proud of my team, but we literally turned our virtual studio on within 48 hours, which was, from what we've heard from our community, wasn't happening in other communities. So that blew my mind. And it was like 18-hour days. Like we were on, Zoom conferences, mind body conferences. We were just literally researching data and how to turn into an online business in like 2 days. But we did it. And our community says that we didn't miss a beat, but it was fast and furious. And so as we're literally transitioning the company over, we're also training our employees to pivot with us. And it happened so quickly that it was certainly it was the whole, like, you had the option of fighting, freezing, or fleeing. And we just fought like hell. And I have to say those moments really like blow my mind because I'm like, we did that. And it happened. It was smooth. It was seamless. We were dedicated and we made it happen. But those were long days. When I look back, I'm like, how did we do that?
Was there anything that you didn't anticipate or that ended up being a surprise to you during this process?
So lots of surprises happened. Well, one of them internally, what I didn't expect and was probably one of the most heartbreaking parts of what happened during COVID is we lost 60% of our business quickly. And the profit margin for yoga and fitness studios are really small anyhow. And when we had to give our employees a 50% pay cut, that was really hard. We had half our team that was like, listen, we're just so thankful to be working right now. Like a little bit of money versus no money. Like we're just so grateful. And that was just incredible. But then we had a divide where we had parts of our team that couldn't understand it. And it was heartbreaking that while in a pandemic that I felt more like a parent trying to tell a child that we had to cancel like the family vacation and they were angry at me. So that was really hard, especially when you're a team, right? And our team was supposed to be a family. And then what also happened during all of this is we realized that, well, we had known for a long time that our physical studio didn't have quality air. Right. So our goal one day was to move into a larger space, but it wasn't going to happen now. And my business partner had just come back from maternity leave, literally the week the pandemic hit. I had been running the company for about 1.5 years without her. And so, I had approached our landlord about him installing an HVAC system in our studio. I had done several quotes and it was around $12,000. And with me not owning the property, it was a really big investment. Unfortunately, this turned into a really sour situation. And in the end, we were asked to leave our building. And so while all this was happening, we ended up having to pack up our studio and our spa and literally build a whole new business, because before that, our intention was to eventually get back in studio. And so there was a lot of mourning and grieving of what we were and what we thought we were going to be and where we ended up.
So what happens to a brick and mortar business when you lose the actual physical space or the physical location that you have?
Well, people were really connected to the space, right? Because Sweet Balance really is the place where people come together. And it was heartbreaking and anxiety-ridden, trying to imagine who we would be without the brick and mortar, right? Like that's where everyone came together. And so those times I really thought like, we're going under. And it was scary. Those were dark moments where I was like, wow, like I'm angry. I invested my entire life. I've sacrificed so much. I've missed out on so much, and it's all gone now. Thankfully, that's not what ended up happening, but those are probably some of the scariest moments. And even just to like watch people leave, like we had to understand and we were compassionate about it, but it was scary.
Now that we're several months into the pandemic, can you talk a little bit about where you are now with your business and what you're currently up against?
So I'm moving a lot slower these days because I want to be really mindful about how I'm moving forward. There's a lot of information about what you need to do now to move forward as a virtual company. And I'm really focusing in on a practice called Body First. And so I am really paying attention to my health and my well-being and letting that be the deciding factor for all of my business decisions. I'm feeling that is really helping me stay grounded and not feel competitive or not feel like I'm going to miss out or feeling like I need to do what all the other studios are doing. I'm finding the sense of comfort of just being okay. I'm slowing down big time in the sense that we don't need to have the best production. I want my teachers to really continue to offer live experiences where my most recent email to them was that we are not here to be perfect. We are here to share love. And when you stutter and when you can't find your prop and when your hair is a mess because your baby was up all night and you have bloodshot eyes, I want people to see that this is what yoga is. It's not about being pretty. It's not about being flexible. It's not about being perfect. It's about coming to a space where we can just be who we are and feel better now.
Having moved into the digital realm, do you feel that it's sustainable for your business?
I feel that it is. I feel that what has kept us in business all these years are truly our imperfection. I feel like because we're real people, our studio has always been the space where, you have moms that are mourning the deaths of their children that have overdosed, right? We have the new mom that is trying to figure out, how to be a mom. We have teenagers that are experiencing anxiety. We have people that are just trying to stay sober, right? We have so many people that are just trying to get well and to feel well and sustain being well. And because our teachers, our community are so real about that, I feel like we're in the hearts of our community and as well as they're in our hearts. And I feel like that, it's like that song, When the Bones Are Good. I don't feel like Sweet Balance. I don't feel like anything could take us down unless we decided to lovingly bow out. A lot of companies right now are having to be really creative and increasing their revenue in other areas of their businesses. So a lot of companies now are pivoting to like online shopping. They're doing outdoor classes. But the biggest thing is everyone's funding is running out. And I'm watching people shut their doors because they don't want to take out that second, third, or fourth loan, right? And the other thing is because of the strain, businesses are also looking at, from a business perspective, is it intelligent for me to stay in business? I had a friend of mine who decided that when COVID hit, she had been in the best year of 8 years of business. And she's like, I did it. I achieved it. I don't want to deal with the struggles and the stressors of what we're up against today. So she lovingly was just like, I'm good. And I'm proud of what I created. And I feel like that's what's happening a lot now too, where people are just lovingly bowing out and they're like, hey, I had a good run. I had a great run, but I'm going to do something different now because I don't want to struggle anymore. I feel like for us, for our live stream, for our on-demand, for our digital platform, that this is the best thing that happened for our Sweet Balance family. And we truly are a family. And I am always talking to my teachers and asking them, like, how are you? Like, how's your body? What are you communicating? Before COVID hit, I ended up having to take some medicine because my anxiety was so bad. I went to the doctors and I was like, I can't breathe. And I had all these tests done, and my doctor's like, you're healthy, you're having a panic attack. And I remember, gosh, that was like the most humbling moment, because I'm like, but I own a yoga studio. I meditate, I do yoga, like I go for facials, I get massages, like I'm in therapy. Like, what do you mean I'm having a panic attack? She's like, yeah. She's like, could you imagine what would be happening for you if you didn't practice all of those things? And that was a pivotal moment in my life where I actually knew I needed to change my business, because I didn't want to continue on living that way where I had to be medicated in order to maintain my life. And so when COVID hit, I actually came off my medicine, and I've been building my business from that place of slow and steady and really staying focused on my well-being this entire time.
With relation to COVID, what's your biggest fear or challenge with your business?
I think my biggest fear was really, how was I gonna sustain my life, right? Like, I knew I couldn't sustain it as a brick and mortar. So COVID for me actually helped me come up against my fears and get really close to them, and really make significant changes to run my business differently. You know, I wanted a company that was pivoting to be more socially conscious. I wanted one that really supported well-being. I wanted one that really was based on growth and development and really helping people be the better change that we need in our world. So for me, the fear really hasn't been about where we're going now. If anything, I feel more inspired now. I feel thankful, but I feel pain for those that are in brick and mortar and are suffering the consequences of it. That's really what I feel the most pain for.
What's been the most frustrating part of the whole experience?
Well, before COVID hit, I had reached this really sweet spot in our business, right? Like, I was finally making money, and I was going on dates with my man, and I hired a new management team. I had read this quote that small leaks can sink a great ship. So when I heard that, I was like, oh, we're gonna clean up shop then. And so I went through my entire company and I just cleaned it out. People quit. I let people go, and I restructured the entire business. And I, at that point, was like, yes, I did it. I am finally where I need to be. And then COVID hit. And so it was so frustrating because I finally got it all down pat, right? And then now it's I've spent all these months recreating the business. And on top of it, it's when we were asked to leave, I'm packing up a spa, I'm packing up a yoga studio, and then I personally moved in with my boyfriend. So I'm also moving my home. I literally just it was all my roots were taken out and I had to be transplanted somewhere else. And so I'm still living out of boxes and trying to figure that all out. And I'm creating a whole new life. It's I got this reset on life, and it's rebuilding. So there's a lot of recreating of standard operating procedures. It's a whole new business now. The things that mattered in studio no longer matter because it's virtual. And then learning as you go, right? That's life. You learn as you go, but we're learning a lot as we go. And so it's a lot to recreate it all. We did start to sublet a spa in Peabody. And so I'm offering bodywork and facials again. And so what I've decided is that I'm just taking one client a day. But it's also beautiful too, because the old me would have worked on several clients throughout the day, back to back to back, and would have been in a dark room for 7 hours. And so again, I feel for me, what's pivoted in my life is the quality of my life has actually gone up.
So we often hear that small businesses are the lifeblood of our country, but this year we've seen so many have to permanently close their doors.
Yeah.
As a small business owner, do you see what's happening to other businesses right now and feel like what's being said doesn't necessarily match the response?
Yeah. Gosh. Yeah, small business is the lifeblood, right? And it's sweat equity that keeps these doors open. I just don't think that we as consumers are educated enough into how much small business really contributes to local economy in the sense of the schools and your children and employing people. It's like most small business owners have refinanced their homes so they can take out a loan so they can keep their doors open. I see people aging by the second. I see people getting sick because of the stress to try to keep their doors open. And it's like, you have to have a big dream to go into small business. And just to watch your dream die second by second is like the pain, the emotional pain and the emotional scars that the small business owner endures. And I think that we as consumers are entitled, right? And instead of thinking like, all right, let's help these small businesses by offering feedback of like, how can I help, right? Versus putting negative reviews online. Like right now should be the last time anyone puts a negative review online. Call a business owner, send them an email, ask how you can help, right? We're closing the doors on people's dreams, like by the second. I just don't think that we understand what it's like to have like our hearts shattered. And that's really what small business is. Like I mean, so many times I've dropped to my knees crying, right? Stomach aches, like keeling over a chair because my stomach hurts so bad because I'm so anxious and I'm so worried. Like that's what small business is. But what's bigger than that bellyache is the heart to want to keep it open. I remember the first year being a brick and mortar business. I had already been in business for 2 years as a solopreneur, right? Like I would travel around and I would teach workshops. But while I was doing that, I also had an online wellness platform, which is network marketing. But that gave me my paycheck. But that paycheck came from helping people get healthy, right? So that paycheck allowed for me to go in business with my cousin because we weren't taking a paycheck. I remember our first year, Sandra saying to me, like, we should give ourselves like $50 a week. Like $50 a week. And I had goddamn customers complaining to me that had 2 homes telling me my prices were too high. Like people in small business aren't doing this to become millionaires. And what really sucks, especially about the yoga and fitness industry, is that what we've learned is that in order to become financially abundant is to make more locations, right? So we have some businesses that have grown 5, 6, 7 studios. But now what's happened? They're trying to pay rent for 5 to 7 locations and are doing an online platform, but it's not like they're getting 7 revenue streams from 7 online platforms. They're getting 1 that now needs to pay for 7 locations. But you know what's so hard about those 7 locations? You know the story of every person that comes in that door. And how do you close the doors on that? I know one of our members, she lost her daughter to an overdose. And every morning I saw her at 9:15. She came always, a few minutes early. And she would be on her mat. She would cry her entire practice, but she didn't miss a day. She didn't miss a day. And you know what? That woman went out into the world with the biggest heart and a smile on her face. Like, yeah, we go without because when you know someone's story and you know someone's pain, you're willing to make the sacrifices, right? During, our probably like our second month in COVID, we were still paying for all our overhead costs and actually increased our overhead costs because we had to invest in software to be able to have a virtual platform. One of our old members reached out to us and ripped into us and just told us that we weren't doing enough, our prices were too high, and decided to go online and create this thread where she emailed several of our members to leave our studio as a way of like sticking it to us because we didn't decrease our prices yet. But at that time, we were paying more for overhead and weren't able to possibly lower anything because we also had just lost 60% of our revenue. So that's the other part too. It's like, because that one person was angry and entitled, that affected my well-being, the well-being of our business, the well-being of our teachers, of our community. And I think that that's where we need to be really mindful of, is like how we impact people's lives by what we say, our behaviors. It's like I said, like a business can't afford a negative review. So like I want to invite anyone that is being a consumer, if you're not getting good service or you feel like the product could be better, is to be of service, right? I want to ask that you give back to us. And I think that this is a reminder because we all get caught up in our own stuff. We all get caught up in life and the busyness of it. But I think that this is a time where we all need to pause and just see, like, where can I give back in my community? Most of us don't have the money to be paying for Google ads and Facebook ads. Like, it's expensive. And so we are 100% depending on you as a, consumer to really share the beauty in your experiences. So every time we share a story, that story just spreads. But we also have to be mindful that when we have a complaint or a judgment, we need to hold that back and go and have a conversation in a way that is going to help that company grow or to support them. Because we are the ones that are supporting you. It's not the Cheesecake Factory or whatever big corporation that is at your child's bake sale, making baked goods for you and making it sure it's gluten-free, dairy-free, and nut-free. So that way your kids are safe. Like, we go the extra mile for our community because you're our family. And we know that family isn't blood, right? The people that know, and understand you. And so if you want to see your family businesses or your small businesses stay open, stay connected. Even an email right now that just says a thank you or like what worked is like light for us. It's like medicine for us small business owners.
Thank you for listening to Maintaining Sweat Equity. New episodes are available on the 1st and 15th of each month. Please be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, as well as our video version on YouTube. If you have a story to tell about your small business, email us at maintainingsweatequity@gmail.com. See you in the next episode.